No.
No. We just messing with you, baby.
Tell my granddaughter, she already loves it, has never seen your Jeep. She loves it. She's crazy about it.
I love it.
She loves it. Well, she's got one. But I told you we had one, what type it was.
Oh.
She loves it. She loves Jeeps, and she's just loves it.
I'm actually gonna drive that thing out to California,
Kelly's not here tonight.
and I wanna
This
stop,
is a different meeting.
see everything.
Hey, Ben, John.
It might
So
take,
how have you been?
Oh,
Good. Doing well.
I got nothing better.
I'll bring you, have our council
you're
meeting.
from here
You'll see.
to Los Angeles area,
That being said, where's
it's San Diego or
Oh
something.
my goodness.
No.
It's something like Texas. Everything from here to there, you can kind of like get used to it. But when you got Texas,
he'll be
it took
here.
forever.
He's gotta be here. Yeah.
But you're loving it.
I'm gonna go kinda, I actually thought about taking 50 all the way to LA.
Him or Cheyenne, one of
50
them
runs
might
all
be
the
here.
way to
Yeah,
LA.
you're gonna go
Oh, Cheyenne?
Him or her.
this way and come down. I think.
I didn't know Cheyenne did that.
Yeah.
I took
She,
what?
she was in our last one. Yeah, she filled him.
We had done,
Chromecast.
yeah, we done Chromecast.
Everybody tells me
Okay,
that
we're connected.
We need to do a
66
single TV.
isn't much to see on it
Wi-Fi.
anymore.
Yeah.
That was used to go
both TVs
that way.
You and Cheyenne?
My
Do
way.
you? She good.
Doesn't matter to me.
I like her.
What?
Trying to get the HDMI set up.
20 and
Okay.
See if you can just grab
that
my
way.
TV.
Yeah, let's say we'll try and good. Okay, so remind me on the Chromecast, we're coming in and
You what?
My brother-in-law.
You want the support Wi-Fi?
yeah, I just
Seen it.
spent a little, taking a little while to boot up.
He'd driven
Okay.
both ways.
Somebody see that, they'll say, I can't believe you tried to raise that up.
Okay.
Now,
I had to stop.
Then we go,
You,
That's what I want to do.
I get that at the house.
Take my time, stop, look, see, you know,
oh, yes.
plan it out.
okay, try it again, hold on. Yeah,
Hurry up.
Isn't this a blessing that we don't have Tom Grip tonight?
He wasn't there last night either,
There's cast.
or
Awesome.
Monday night, this is Wednesday.
Okay, City Hall TV East or
I was
West?
thinking he might be, but.
Which one's?
I figured it would too.
Let's pick
What's your
East.
prefer? East, okay.
But everything's good, I mean,
Since my Chromecast isn't showing up,
do anything.
Yeah, so it's under a
we'll
new,
probably have to hit the drop down till to broadcast your whole desktop.
No,
okay.
I know. It's monotonous. Just the
Got a screen? Is that, well, so far it's doing it is doing that.
Streaming live.
Let's try that. Oh, yeah.
Maybe the devil, look who just walked in.
Here, I have to restart the stream too.
What do you need?
Did you close Chrome out?
No, it should
Here,
be.
let's pop it back up.
Good to see you again.
Go back where you were.
we
Hit
go.
that drop down.
Yes, sir.
Stop and restart the broadcast.
Oh, okay. Okay, where that was under.
Was it?
Good, how are you? Save and share.
Okay.
Save and share is
They
where
keep
hiding now.
updating, not telling us
Exactly.
things.
I inserted yourself.
Okay, so stop.
All right, let's call this
Click it.
March meeting of the Lawrenceburg Advisory Planning Commission to order.
I do.
Just hit that.
Yeah.
Roll call, please.
Jim Cook.
Here.
Gary Hutchison.
Here.
Tim Denning.
Here,
Owen Cross.
Here.
Thomas Roletta.
Present.
Lenny Fryman.
Here?
Lenny Abbott is absent. Attorney Delwalden.
here.
And myself.
We all had a chance to review the minutes of the past meeting. If so, do we have a motion and or a second to approve it?
I'll make a motion. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion accepted. Do we have a staff report tonight?
One thing I've got for you in your packet is, we just had a Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and they have voted to move their time from 5 PM to 4:30 PM on the first Wednesday of the month.
Okay. New business, about the public hearing for a proposed replacement planning zoning code, otherwise known as Uniform Development Ordinance and Zoning Maps.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. So the notice that is commensurate with the statute was published, ran in the newspaper, notifying the public that there is a public hearing today at 6:05 p.m., so just in a couple minutes. The purpose of that public hearing is to allow for public input to be heard by the Advisory Plan Commission on what is proposed as a uniform development ordinance, which encapsulates both a new planning and zoning code as well as planning and zoning maps. Those were included in your packets. Those were made available at the clerk treasurer's office to the public. And I'll just kind of preface a little bit as we lead into the public hearing. This project, and HWC Engineering is here. They're going to speak tonight. Your questions as a board will be heard, and then there'll be a vote to certify this, and to vote to approve this or reject this. And if you vote to approve it, it goes on to City Council. But it starts with the Plan Commission, and the reason for that is, as the Advisory Plan Commission for the City of Lawrenceburg, it is your primary task to develop the planning and zoning rules and regulations for the city. And you do that in the form of what we've had in the past is kind of a disparate set of ordinances and rules and regulations that weren't as up to date or as organized as we would have liked for them to be. And the statutes that create the Advisory Plan Commission and establish your duties specifically contemplate two big things that you guys do. And of course, you come to these meetings and you hear people individually present on replats and subdivision realignments, new subdivisions, and changing subdivisions. And that's kind of your daily thing that you get used to. But the big picture is that you do a comprehensive plan every 10 years, and then you are responsible for developing and establishing the planning and zoning ordinances that guide the day-to-day operations for Mr. Johnson and his office and the way that the city operates. So the proposed uniform development ordinance that we have encapsulates subdivision code, planning code, building standards code, all of the codes that are kind of separate now, plus the maps that match up to them. They've been developed by HWC engineers because HWC engineers developed our comprehensive plan. And some of you are involved in that, some of you weren't. This is really many years in the making, and is a result of the work first on the comprehensive plan to interview members of the community. You guys remember we did a ton of surveys, one-on-one. These folks came down, were heavily involved in learning everything and anything about the city of Lawrenceburg, learning about our different residents, our different businesses, the difference between the Route 50 corridor, Ludlow Hill, the historic downtown, and just what those needs were. And once you, as the Plan Commission, led the way to develop our new comprehensive plan, then these folks rolled into developing planning and zoning ordinances that would match that comprehensive plan, the needs of our community, match with our goals, match with the ever-changing environment of residential building and modification of private residences, as well as businesses, public residences, streets, all of the things that kind of happen to allow us to do the things that we need to do in the city. So this is a multi-year project. What you see is the proposed new ordinances all in one package. So UDO is just packaging what was formerly multiple different ordinances. And with the exception of, and John, correct me if I'm wrong, but with the exception of the building standards code that we revised fairly recently, most of these codes just haven't been revised at all for decades.
Some of these codes, our subdivision code was 1995. The bulk of our.
If you will, talking to your mic, I can't hear you very well. Thank you.
Our subdivision code was circa 1995, and our base code of ordinances for zoning is 1997.
And so what happens is every 10 years by statute, we're required to redo our comprehensive plan. And in the past, we've done that just because we kind of had to. You guys know, I mean, we'll just be honest. The past administrations that have had, that fell in line with the comprehensive plan kind of did it and put it in the closet and said, you know, that's fine, we did that, but we didn't really change anything. And I think that the experience that I had with the last comprehensive plan is everyone was so involved, the community, the elected officials, the appointed officials, business owners, the fire department, police department, the utility department, just everyone in every possible private and public walk of life, that we had such a great comprehensive plan that really spoke specifically to what is Lawrenceburg, what makes Lawrenceburg great, and what will make Lawrenceburg greater, that having the same firm and the same folks then make that comprehensive plan actually go into action in the form of this new UDO is exactly what we're doing. So it's just taking the comprehensive plan and saying, hey, we did a ton of work for a really long time led by you guys and led by the community. Let's put that into action. Let's update our statutes and our ordinances so they match up. So if it pleases Mr. Crook to now open up the public hearing that's been published for 6:05, and we will now call that public hearing to order, and we'll ask and invite any member of the public that has a comment on the UDO as proposed to now step to the podium, and they may speak.
All right, let's do that. Any questions or comments?
I've got a couple of things. If you don't mind, I'm Scott McLean. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I started reading through about the first 10 chapters and kind of fell asleep. No, I'm just kidding. No, so I was going through some of these things and realized that I did an overview, and I can't go into everything because there's so much to it, and it looks pretty good from what I can see. But there's a couple things that I deal with on a daily basis and have to because I have a storefront, is signage. I see things from almost 2-story blow-ups to these big flags to all kinds of things. So I started looking at the signage, and I'm not trying to nitpick anything, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say anything, but there's a couple questions I have and then a comment. And then the comment I have is, they say that we don't want signs projecting any more than 36 inches from the face of a building. Well, if you look out there, they come out 5 feet, they come out 4.5 feet, they come out 48 inches. 36 is really restrictive, and I think that should be extended to maybe a 36-inch sign with a 6-inch, attachment or what have you, some sort of change in there. So that way we don't see someone who wants to put a sign together and comes to our group later and says, hey, I need a zoning change for this 6 inches or 12 inches or whatever it is. So it's a very minor item. But the other thing is, when we have temporary displays, which are allowed, like the flags, what do you call it, the feather flags, what do we do with the people who have them now? I mean, if this goes into effect, are they affected immediately, or do we let them have them? So that's a question.
Those are both good questions, and Brian, I told you I wasn't going to do this, but I think if you could just touch briefly on signs specifically, and then to answer your question, Scott, yes, it becomes effective once it's passed. So the way the process works is, if this group feels inclined to vote to approve this, to pass it to council with a favorable vote, then council will certify it, and it will be passed as an ordinance by the city council, but only based on the recommendation of the Advisory Plan Commission. And then once that process is completely done, so let's say 30 days from now, if it's passed forward, that's when it would become effective. And then HWC folks, if you could just briefly, I think it's a good example, and that's the only reason I would say to do that. It's one of a million things in this code, but let's just touch on signs, since Mr. McLean brought it up, whoever would like to do that from HWC.
Here, let me cast.
And yeah, I'll just give a brief introduction. So my name is Adam Pieper. My name is Adam Pieper. I'm a community planner with HWC Engineering. So as Dell said in his introduction, really the zoning ordinance and subdivision control ordinance together act as primary implementation mechanisms for the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan that you all worked on and adopted is adopted by the council as resolution. So that's a guide, right? You look at that and you look at the future land use map when you're considering things like rezoning petitions, but it is not adopted as ordinance law like speed limits, parking, and all those other things included in city code. So that's why the update to the zoning and subdivision control ordinances and combining them into the UDO is so important as an implementation mechanism for all the work that went into the comprehensive plan. So things like identifying the different character districts or areas of the community, and as well as things talked about during the comprehensive plan process like aesthetics and making sure the downtown stays vibrant and active. Are all things that we considered and looked at as we were amending the comprehensive plan, or excuse me, the development ordinances. I'll also say HWC partnered with Civic Blueprint, and that's what Brian and Laney Stumpf with Civic Blueprint are here, who helped in the drafting of these ordinances, and then as well as the updates to the zoning map to correspond with the new districts that are in the Unified Development Ordinance. And through that process, it was really applying the districts that best fit the current use of the property. When we were working on those maps, it was not the intent of that process to try to kind of pre-zone for any future development, but to better reflect existing development in most cases. So Brian, if you want to touch on the signage question.
Glad to. Good evening. I'm Brian Stumpf with Civic Blueprint. So on the screen, you'll see this is in chapter 6, talking about the signage, and for projecting signs. So each of the, I guess, back up. So we break the signage into permanent signs and temporary signs and so forth. So regarding the project, and then we identify the different types of signs. So for projecting signs here, we identify what it is. You see the image there of how you sort of identify the sign, the area of the sign. And so this is, in the ordinance as it's written, we've got projecting signs are 6 square feet and 3, so it does identify that the maximum projection out is 3 feet. So that gives you essentially a 3 foot by 2 foot sign if that's the configuration you choose to use that 6 square feet in. So right now that is the limitations for the projection. And you see that in the design standards for the projecting signs.
And so this is a good kind of aside and a good illustration for the members of the public, since we're still in the public hearing, and for the Advisory Plan Commission. So what we have endeavored to do is to take a third-party engineering firm who has elicited the help of a fourth party, of another party that plans, revises codes as a profession, as an expert in this field, to create a code that is specific for the needs of Lawrenceburg, based on the comprehensive plan that you guys have approved and the city council has approved, based on the input of the city and a very in-depth and thorough look at the city. And so rather than, one option would be, hey, let's just all get together every Saturday for the next month and we'll write a sign law, right? Well, that's kind of what we already have. We have a bunch of old codes from 1996 that have been modified as we go, or maybe followed sometimes, maybe not. But we really don't have something that's comprehensively developed by an expert that is narrowly tailored to our city and is based on our comprehensive plan. So rather than us going through and saying, well, I have a business and I like my sign to be bigger, so I don't like this one small part, we want to look at the whole picture, because we know that, hey, we want this to benefit our citizens for the next 5, 10, 15 years, until it needs to be modified again. And so this is a good example of, these guys are experts in this. They've traveled around the state doing this for other cities. And so this is something that is commonly used in cities for sign regulation. And remember that whatever we put in this code, you can always obtain a variance if it's appropriate, right? And it could be changed later. However, we feel, and John, you can weigh on this too, we feel that a comprehensive, objective code made by an expert is better than us kind of piecemealing it and micromanaging it. We feel like that's kind of hurt us over the years. Because we want to be fair to citizens and businesses. We want people to feel like, hey, I want to build a house in Lawrenceburg. I want to put my business in Lawrenceburg because I can pull their code up online and read it, and it's good and it's friendly and it's open, and they don't have to call John and say, hey, I'm confused. This part of the code conflicts with this part. And John might say, well, yeah, you're right. So now maybe you got to apply for a variance, and maybe they say, we're not going to put our business there, right, before they even get to us. So this makes it objective and fair and friendly to residences and businesses. So that's just a good example. And you guys can kind of stop there. And these guys are going to speak again after the public hearing, but thank you. Are there any other members of the public? And Scott, did you have more?
Let me ask you one more question then.
Just come to the podium, you're fine.
Nitpick anything, but it's.
You do, but we.
I'm glad that you kind of set the palettes that this is, hey, this is it.
Yes,
But, so, the temporary signs, again, if someone has, as an example, the feather sign now, today, when this goes through, they cannot use that unless it's under a temporary display, and they have permission for that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay, that's it.
And that's a good example, and everyone will be treated the same.
Gotcha.
And
Good.
fairly, and if we decide that there's maybe an exception that should be granted, then the zoning appeals board can create a variance. But we really want a system where we don't need to grant variances because everyone's being treated fairly and the same.
Because it's been, living downtown, I mean, we all come downtown, there's all things all over the place down here.
Yep.
So it'd be nice to get it tidy.
We call it the arms race of signage, right? Somebody's, and then the next one's gotta be bigger, or taller, to be more visible, and that's what we're trying to get with.
Thank you.
No, thank you, because that's a perfect example of what we're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Are there any other members of the public that have a comment or even questions about the proposed uniform development ordinance and the maps? Chairman Crook?
So,
Yes.
just from my understanding, if I wanted to do something in the city that conflicted with this, then I come and ask for a variance. And it's either approved or disapproved, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's another good illustration, because we're a city that has typically seen a lot of variance requests. And the reason for that is our code hasn't been updated in so long that we have portions that may conflict, portions that just don't work anymore. It makes John's life difficult, because remember, our process is there's gonna be staff approval where things can just be approved at John's office if they're just clearly okay in the code. And only the things that someone wants to do that they clearly can't do would then come for a variance. We want to make that as rare as possible, because we've got a fair code that's clear, it's not old, it's not outdated, nothing's in conflict. So if something comes before the BZA, it will be a clear departure from this code. And then we'll really have to think about granting a variance, because we've already kind of covered it here. And that's our goal, is to make everything easier, more fair and open, and better for the city.
Okay, so are there any other comments or questions?
I do have one more comment, if you don't mind, real quick. After reviewing this and looking at this very well detailed, it was amazing, even to the point I was just looking at that temporary sign that we can put outside our store, width, height, it was excellent. So it was very detailed.
Thank you. So if there's no other comments or questions, do we have a motion to approve or deny this package?
And Chairman Crook, I'm sorry, if you would just formally announce that the public hearing is closed, and then we can move to that next step.
Okay. So the public hearing is now closed. Do we have a motion to approve or deny this package?
And I'm sorry again, Mr. Chairman, if we could just ask that the motion would be to approve and certify the UDO and the maps and pass it forward to council with a favorable recommendation for them to also pass it.
Thank you.
But before we do that, we can ask questions, correct?
Yes, and you should, and you can discuss.
Okay, first and foremost, I appreciate the job you guys did with this. I mean, as Scott stated, it's pretty detailed. The only problem I had is I'm one of them people that try to compare apples to apples. When I sit here and I look at the new compared to the old, and I got 288 pages, it just goes over the top of my head. So basically, we have to rely on Mr. Johnson and you guys to say, hey, what's in front of you tonight is better than what you had before. And with that being said, what may help me, I know myself, would be if I would have had what you changed from the old one in the red pen, so to speak, and what you took out, marked out, and then I could have followed along easier. But it is really, really hard for me, and I apologize because I've tried my best to try to go over this, and it's just not working. I mean, I just get lost in it.
And
No.
don't apologize at all, and if it's okay, Mr. Chairman, I would say let's take a pause. These guys do have a presentation that will hopefully clear some of that up, and you, Brian, you can get started. And what I'll say, Mr. Roulette, is that the reason we didn't do it that way is because we're repealing and replacing everything. So everything
I see
goes
that.
away and
Yeah.
it's all new, yeah. So,
And even some of the provisions that stayed have moved. So I think trying to redline and track that change would have been more difficult to follow than
Probably
just
so.
starting new. I'll also say, recognizing that it is longer or larger document, and that's because it is a combination, Brian.
Yeah.
You know, it's a combination of what was the zoning ordinance, the subdivision control ordinance that was separate, and then building code,
Your housing
historic
code.
preservation.
Yes,
code
touch on it.
enforcement,
And-
historic.
Yeah, I see
bunch of
where you've
stuff.
added more to what was.
And because, a lot of times what we find is there's definitions in the zoning ordinance, there's definitions in the subdivision control ordinance. Sometimes the same term is used in both ordinances, but defined differently, right? So it means one thing when you're going through one process and another thing when you're going through a different process, so just trying to create that consistency. And beyond that, also, again, adding some districts to recognize the difference, the inherent difference between downtown and up on the hill and, commercial corridors. So actually having to create some more districts from where you started. So yeah, I do want to certainly acknowledge that and not take away or diminish that comment and the difficulty
You know, one thing that
of evaluating this.
sorry,
Yeah.
is I tried to look at setbacks. I tried to compare the setbacks that what were in the original to the newer one, and I'm really lost with them. It was my understanding that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Johnson, that downtown alone was 5-foot setbacks. Does that sound right?
5 foot or match existing on the block.
Okay.
Add the two sides.
And Ludlow Hill was possibly 10?
Yeah.
Was it 10?
I'd have to look at our old zoning code.
Okay. And seeing, I was having a hard time trying to figure that out. I
No,
couldn't
let's
realize.
start there, and Mr. Lett, that's a perfect example, because we spent a ton of time on setbacks, so let's start there, and.
Well, and I got one question,
Yes,
one other
sir.
thing to ask here, and maybe maybe I'm reading this wrong. On chapter 2, page 5, hold on just a second here. I had it there, and then we went to signs when Mr. Scott was talking. If you look down at your lot requirements, and you go to this is the top one, it says minimum living area square feet, and you go over to R6, is that comma in the wrong spot? Is that,
Well, that's a typo.
okay, that's the one thing I thought when I was trying to
The
go.
comma's in the right spot. The extra zero in the end is not. It should be
Okay,
1,000.
so
It should be
1,000,
yes,
not 10,000.
correct.
Okay.
And just to warn you guys, you're gonna wanna hire Mr. Lett before you leave here, because he's never.
Well, and I really do try, because I'm here for a reason.
Yep.
And I just want to, for this board to understand as well as me, if we pass this and there is something that we find out does not work out, we still have that ability to change that, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's
sir.
one thing that we all need to keep in mind. There's no way that I know myself that I can go through all this and say, this is better than what we had before. And I'm sure it is, don't take me wrong. But I didn't compare them apples to apples. I tried, and I just couldn't do it. And I apologize for that, because I try to be more prompt in that.
No, don't apologize, because we spent a couple of years on this,
Yeah.
and it's still difficult to put it all together, and that's important, and we can and will change things if we need to, and we can
Okay.
and will grant variances if we need to. rolling this all out at once is really an effort to, what we want, guys, is for someone says, hey, I went to music, I live in California, but I was visiting family, I want to live in Lawrenceburg. I'm gonna build a house. We want them to be able to get online, find out everything they know about how to build a house in Lawrenceburg without ever having to call anybody. And same if Target wants to come here, or Applebee's, or whoever, because that's how a city becomes welcoming and inviting and spurs development. And that's why everything's got reshuffled, so it's readable and fair. But that doesn't mean that every single thing in there is exactly something that we might not consider changing later, and we reserve that ability, and we're committed to doing that. So we will do that if we think we need to. So that's a great point.
And a lot of these changes are for the betterment of the city. We're not just doing this to appease, let's say, contractors or anything.
100%. And in fact, we specifically did it this way so that no one individual group could say, well, I want this to be different to benefit me. That's why it's so important to have these guys do it. Tell us, you guys are the experts, and you did our comprehensive plan. You tell us what's best for us. Because if we did it ourselves, it wouldn't work out, because we would skew things towards what each individual likes. We want it to be fair for everybody. So that's exactly what we did, Mr. Roulette. Brian, you want to start with setbacks? Because we did spend a ton of time.
Do you want to do setbacks or want to do the presentation? Because I may answer some of the questions.
Start with setbacks, and then
Okay.
we'll keep you on your toes.
Awesome. Okay, so setbacks. So one of the things is, Del mentioned, I guess let me back up.
Okay, whenever we go there, I see the page. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'll give you a quick little tutorial. So when you go into Adobe and you're using this electronically, click on the little bookmark tab, and that will give you all the chapters. And so you can just click on that to navigate the document. And so this is hyperlinked to easily navigate the document. Also, it's word searchable. So if there's a term you're looking for, you can search the entire document and see where that term is used throughout the ordinance. One of the things that we've done is that, so looking we start out with the comprehensive plan and looked at the different areas of the different direction and policies were given in the comprehensive plan. Taking that, looking at the different residential districts that are necessary and so forth. So the reason you can't do an apples-to-apples comparison is because a lot of these districts are coming straight from what was identified in the comprehensive plan for these districts. The other thing we've done where this looks different than the existing table is we've broken out the residential by types of buildings. So you'll see single-family detached, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, and it moves on to the next page into townhomes and multifamily dwellings. And so we do have different standards for based off the type of building that it is. And the reason for that is in the language that's in here, we have different sizes or lot areas based off of that. So take, for example, a duplex. We allow, you'll see that, like in an R2, a single-family home is, the minimum lot width is 50 feet. You'll see for a duplex, it's 25 feet. What we're doing is we've set up the ordinance such that if you've got a side-by-side duplex, that property line can run through the building, through that party wall between the two units. And so each of those can be an owner-occupied units. One of the things that stood out to us in the comprehensive plan is that we want more homeownership in Lawrenceburg. How can we do that? Well, part of that is when you have attached residential, allow people to own each individual unit. And so that's how these standards are set up, and that's why it's a little bit different than what you currently have. Right now, a duplex has to be just on a single lot. So you're guaranteeing that at least half of that duplex, if not both sides, will be rental. So these changes will allow that to be each unit to be owner occupied. So the setbacks, let's see, they are on the next page.
So you are, let me question you. I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about a lot. Guy's got a lot, and they want to build, he's got a big enough lot, he could build a house in the back of it. You're saying that they could split their lot and build a house with this ordinance and stuff?
Yeah, you're talking about, in that situation, you're talking about like an accessory dwelling unit. So that would be a separate, that would be a separate dwelling, or it could be part of that could be accessory that would be permitted. It would, in that case, you're dealing with it being on the same lot. But as far as the building, think of it as in terms of building form and building ownership. So if you've got, for example, we're seeing more and more like quadplexes for seniors. So this would allow the flexibility to where each of those units could be on its own lot. And so each unit could be owner occupied.
But if I was an owner and I had a big lot, and I wanted to build one in the back, I
You
had
could-
access, I could do that.
Yes, and there are standards in the ordinance for an accessory dwelling.
And, yeah, that was one of my questions too. There's, like he said, we've
Yeah.
talked, I've talked with John, and this stuff is over my head.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that, it's overwhelming, and we just, and I don't know if the board really knows really what's happening too, and
We
I
just
think
want
we
to
just
do
need
what's
to
right.
do what's
Yeah.
right, but we want to know what
main
we're
thing
doing
here.
to make
Yes.
sure that we feel right.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
And so in that instance, it becomes a question of if the new house that you want to build on the back portion of your lot, if you're keeping the entire lot under your ownership and are adding a second dwelling on the lot, or are you interested in subdividing your parcel to create a whole new lot that then you could sell? So those would be two different processes. The first would be what Brian was referring to, an accessory dwelling unit, because that's a new dwelling that's accessory to your existing one. The second one would be a subdivision, and that's where, again, that subdivision control ordinance that we're incorporating into this would apply. And then there are standards within that say if you're creating a new lot, it has to be
Replotted.
platted, it
Right.
has to have access and all of the standards that
Right.
then go with that.
So it gives you more flexibility, it gives you more freedom in, right now, for example, setbacks are big downtown because they are the same as they are on the hill, because no one ever made a difference between the two. So now what we said is, okay, let's have 0 lot lines allowable downtown because it's got different character. It gives you more flexibility to build, but on the hill, let's still preserve those bigger setbacks because that's what protects everyone's homes. So that's why it's specifically tailored for each part of town, where before it was generic, created problems, people were coming in for variances. Now it allows people to build more and own more.
Yeah.
And
That's just
it-
one scenario, but there's
Yeah.
some more.
That's a good one.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, and to answer your question about setbacks, so there are more setbacks than you're currently dealing with front, side, and rear. That's it.
Right.
We now, if I can blow this up a little bit more, you'll see that in our building placement requirements that we deal with, we have front street side setbacks. So that's for a corner lot. So you got a street on both sides. So you'll have a front yard, and then the street side is the side of the house that's adjacent to the street. Often the ordinances are handling that as a front yard as well, requiring a deep setback. That's not the character of the city. That's not, if you walk around, look at the development pattern. And so that's why it has a smaller, the street side setback is smaller in the front yard, but a little bit, but wider than a standard side yard setback. And then we have the rear setback. The other thing I'll point out is that we have a garage along the street setback. And what that's looking at is, you'll see it's higher than the front yard setback. So if you've got a front load garage, it's gonna be set back behind the front of the house. And that gets rid of the situation where we sort of have that snout house where the garage is out front dominating the house. And that will help with, it's a very important element to have for the character of the community.
On new construction.
Yes.
So Brian, if you could just start with the general, but I did think it was good to go to Mr. Olet's specific.
Yep.
And then just, you can start from the top.
Okay, so, jump here. I'll go quick because we already addressed some of these things, why we're updating the UDO. Again, the main thing was to align with the comprehensive plan. As John mentioned, we've got ordinances that have been around for quite a while, so with some Band-Aids, and really we've got the comp plan. It provides great direction on what we need to do, so we want to align the development codes of the city with the direction that's in the comprehensive plan, simplifying the city's ordinances. This takes essentially, I believe, all of Title 15 and puts into one ordinance. It's all hyperlinked. We also have gotten rid of all the jargon and the legalese. I think you'll find it difficult to find a shall in the ordinance. Not that there's anything wrong with shall, but it's just in plain English on how we write things.
Against the lawyers, and I won't stand for it.
Hey, We love attorneys, but you shouldn't need an attorney to understand what the ordinance is saying, and that's our goal.
Well, I'm gonna tell you right now, there's two different languages in this city. There's the government language, and then there's the Lenny language.
We want it to
So
be
we gotta
legal.
have it down to Lenny terms.
Yep.
All understand.
That's a good thing.
That's our goal here. And as Del mentioned, make it easier for business to locate here or for a family to move to Lawrenceburg. So, the main sort of elements of the UDO look at the districts and the uses, then we get into the standards for development. We're talking about things that are the general standards that apply to everything, and then things that go on plans, things that the standards of what you put in the ground, and then the different approval process, it'd be the subdivision or some of the, any platting that needs to be done, and then enforcement. So really, we took to heart the 4 different districts that are in Lawrenceburg and identified in the comprehensive plan. So the US 50 corridor, for example, there's a corridor overlay that addresses US 50 in here, so that we can have some requirements for signage and access. So what's in that overlay aligns with what is in the comprehensive plan. Downtown, as Del mentioned, we've added a mixed-use district for development downtown, and the whole variety of residential districts that are in the ordinance. Similar, taking the conditions along the riverfront and some of the industrial, and then, there's the corridor again, and then Ludlow Hill, and understanding that the development that happens up there. One of the items that was in the comprehensive plan, talking about keeping off of the steeper slopes in the community, and the elements that add community to the hillside. So there is an overlay that addresses steeper slopes and allows flexibility for where that development happens, so that we're protecting those slopes and staying off of them, so we're not causing trouble. Also have clear subdivision regulations. We've simplified those, made those really clear, whether it's you'll see 3 different types of subdivisions: an administrative subdivision, which is adjusting property lines, or if you're combining lots, just essentially clean that up. That's an administrative process that really is just looking at a secondary plat. It's handled administratively. There's a minor subdivision process, which is splitting a lot, but you're not doing any new infrastructure or dedications of, or there's no improvements going in there as far as no new streets, things like that. And it's just a few lots that can be handled administratively, and then you've got a major subdivision, which would be either a lot of lots or the extension of creation of new roads, things of that nature. And so those are laid out in the document. We've also, just understanding the community, we've created infill development standards for compatibility. So if you're in the downtown focus area, if you're on US 50 in the corridor, or if you're on an infill site where there's development around the site, we've provided some standards in the ordinance that look at the context. We want to make sure that we didn't have a situation, we've all seen it, where it looks like the building fell out of the sky and has no relationship to what is around it. You're wondering, how did that happen? So now you've got some tools to begin to look at, sort of the massing of the building, how it's located on the site, and it's got some design guidelines there. It's not hard and fast, but it gives you the flexibility, because design can be very difficult to legislate. But now you've got something to say, begin to compare what's being proposed versus what's around it. We're not looking for sameness. We want diversity, but we do want compatibility. And so we want things to play well together. One of the things that is in the ordinance as well are property maintenance standards. Often, the city will have, something to deal with grass and weeds or something of that nature, but we have done here in Lawrenceburg what we've done in some other communities, which is put in property maintenance standards that allow the planning department and the code enforcement department to begin to stay on top of maintenance situations. Much of the ordinance is really future focused, future development, but this is one of those elements that helps you with your day-to-day handling of nuisances that the city will has to address. And going along with that are improved enforcement options. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, the state changed the ability to enforce ordinances. And so we have incorporated those elements that the state now allows. Your ordinance was like many, which are, you can sue somebody. Very long process, very expensive process. Now we're using some of the tools that the state allows, One of those is a citation process, essentially a ticketing process. So you can give them a warning letter, they don't do it, then you can issue a citation. And small fee, the fee is in there, but it's one of those things, having been in John's shoes before, dealing with some, how should I say, rampant illegal signage that was happening, you'd send the warning out and then they would come out. And, is the city going to sue because of signs, temporary signs were popping up and blocking a sidewalk? The answer is no, but once we had the ticketing process, here's your warning sign for blocking the sidewalk with your signs, and then they kept doing it, issue a little citation. That $100 fine gets their attention. It gets them to stop doing that. So those are some of the, probably the biggest tool you have in the enforcement. The other part is being able to use the city court for anything that starts moving that direction for higher levels of enforcement. So those were really kind of the big overview of what we were addressing in the ordinance. Be happy to answer any specific questions you have.
Anybody else have any questions, comments?
John, we're gonna throw this at you. Is there things that we're overseeing or we're not seeing, or things, I don't know, we don't know exactly, like I said, we're overwhelmed here, and I'm not real comfortable with what's here right now. Not that it's not a good thing, don't get me wrong. It's just I don't understand it. Is there some things that we need to, the board, that we need to know? Or what are we missing?
If you have any specific questions on, I can try and help you.
Well, and Mr. Fryman, what you're saying, and Mr. Roulette, and everybody's probably thinking the same thing these guys are thinking. When we started this process, and the same thing happened with the comprehensive plan. We had committees, we had community involvement, we had tons of work to individualize this, to hire the best experts, let them go to work. And with this UDO specifically, we've had committee meetings and individual meetings to look at the individual parts of this. And all the parts match up to existing parts. They just make them better and make them cumulative and comprehensive. But there's really no way, again, for you guys to sit here and the 6 or 7 of you rewrite each part of the code, and you wouldn't want to, right? Because then we'd end up with a worse code. And so it's not to say, oh, here's a new code, just trust us and pass it. But there's also no way for us to go through each line with you. But we want you to be comfortable. So whatever that middle ground looks like for you all, we don't have to pass it tonight. We can pass it next month or the month after that, whatever's best for you. We kind of had that group meeting. Remember when we had Planning Commission and BZA and Historic and Council all together? Lenny, or Mr. Fryman, I'm sorry, your question to John's the best one. And I think John speaks for Mario and Ashley and for Morgan, everyone who's involved in implementing this on a day-to-day process. John, what are your thoughts of the process and then the end result, and how will this actually work in process in your office tomorrow and the next day and the next year?
To be blunt, this will make our daily lives better in the office. And with this being so accessible and, just a new thing, it will help spur development.
There's some things that's being changed. What is there, something, Mr. Weldon, is there some things that doesn't come to us, it'll go to BZA now? I mean, I'm reading some of this, but like I said, there's too many pages, and I just,
No, that's a
enough
good
time to
question.
go through all this, I'm just skimping.
Sure, that's a good question. Your roles don't change. So the Planning Commission, again, by statute, you're primarily in charge of passing a comprehensive plan, passing a UDO, like you're doing. Beyond that, your duties are for replats and the platting or the changing of subdivisions or individual parcels, and that's why you see those things go in front of you. And then the BZA, as opposed to that, it's just for variances to existing code. Hey, this code says I can't do it, now I want to. And then historic preservation is specifically tasked with maintaining the historic character of properties and then granting certificates of appropriateness when that character may be modified, when there's a modification. And then city council, which some of you are on, passes the laws for the whole city. So everyone is working together on this from an elected and appointed official position. And Mr. Johnson, as your administrative director, is on a day-to-day basis saying, hey, the code says you can do it, you're good. Or, hey, the code says you can't do it. If you disagree with me, you can file an appeal to the BZA. In addition to that, you've got Mario Todd and Ashley Cook, who are in the field, seeing these projects come to life. You have Morgan Hedrick and Judge Johns with our city court, making sure that everything's enforced properly. So it's as small of a city that we have, it's great to see that everyone is engaged in this process, because again, the only reason you guys work so hard and you come here and you come here prepared with great questions, and you came to that big meeting before and you're here now, and Tom and Lenny, or Mr. Fryman will hear this again when it comes to council, is because all we want is a great city that people want to move here to, move their businesses and their kids to, and we want to make it easy for them to do that. And that's really all this does. It's very complicated and it's very big, but at the end, we want everything to be in Lenny language, right?
Right.
That way, you want to build your business here, I can read Lenny language. Hey, I can do that. Let's do it. Lawrenceburg's great.
Sometimes you do put in Lenny language, but then when you want to mess with me, you start putting in Mr. Weldon language.
That's
And I'm going, huh?
And, just to address Lenny's comment earlier, can we pull up chapter 4, page 4? That accessory structure line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, page 4.
There's been so much going on, I got a whole bunch of this marked.
Yeah.
And it's up on the screen too, Mr.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, accessory dwellings are permitted. No more than one accessory dwelling per lot. Must have the same sewage and water supply. And it cannot exceed 50% of the square footage of the primary structure.
So we want to encourage these kinds of things. And you guys can remember, we've had a couple of these pretty recently where people wanted to get an address for an accessory dwelling structure, or, you know, make some changes that we couldn't do because of setbacks, because of parking and things like that. Where we can, we want to allow them to do that. And we want to encourage that. We want to encourage people to invest in our community, but also protect the character of the neighborhood. And something like that might be permissible downtown and not on the hill, but you want it to be that way. And what I told these guys when they were coming in, they were like, man, we said the same thing. This is a lot. This is overwhelming. No matter how many times we meet, we're all going to feel like we haven't read every single word. And the nature of a planning code is that you don't know if you don't like it until you want to do something and John tells you no, right?
Exactly.
A year from now.
That's a lot of it, yeah.
And won't it be nice a year from now to be able to say, well, first of all, you know, someone is you're in your district, Mr. Fryman, they say, well, Lenny, you know, I wanted to build this and John Johnson said I can't, and I looked on your code online and it says I can't, and I don't like that. Well, it'd be nice to arm everyone with the knowledge that first and foremost, before I even look at what it is specifically, I know that we went through this whole process, years and experts, and really working our tails off to make sure we have an objectively good code. And then so then you don't get a panic when you get a call like that. Because right now that kind of happens because we got a bad code, we got old code, outdated code. But then the next step would be, well, maybe if that person does have a good point and this isn't a good fit, well, then we'll bring it back in this room, and if we need to change it, we will. Or we'll bring it back in this room on another week, and if we want to give them variance, we can. So we don't have to memorize every single word and all 222 pages. We just want to be comfortable that we did the work the right way, and that's kind of how we do our job.
Right.
We're never experts in anything, or in everything rather, but we get the right people in the room, we work real hard, and we have the benefit of our citizens of Lawrenceburg in our hearts, and that's what we've done here for sure.
And I'll jump on my soapbox a little bit. We've talked about this before, but one of the things we do is that with the code, you receive a PDF that you're seeing that's linked and so forth, but you also have the Word documents for those. The answer is life is going to change. Things are always changing. So I always encourage the communities we work with to kind of keep a little list of things that, oh, okay, why don't you tweak that, or this isn't working. And, you know, every year or two, just go through and do minor edits or revisions. Oh, this isn't as clear as we want it to be, or, oh, we need to change that dimension a little bit. We're seeing a couple variances for this. You know, and then just do an annual, or every 2 years, just do an update of ordinance and just keep it clean and keep it active and alive, rather than waiting once every 20, 30 years to do a big overhaul. And it's really, it's a simple thing, but it's one of those that helps keep the code relevant in the long term.
With all that's been said, let's make a motion to approve or deny this document?
And pass on to council.
It would be a vote to approve and certify and pass the council with a favorable, if it pleases the chairman.
Now, if we want to make a different motion,
You can
let's
do
just
whatever.
say it, I would like to table this a little longer, because we got one that's not here, and I know he's got a bunch of questions, and I'm not real comfortable with all this. Like I said, it's going over my head, if we can go through it a little more, or we can have a work session to get this figured out so we all know what's going on.
Make
That's me.
Make your motion.
I'd like to make that motion, that we table it.
And come up with a work session.
Yes. That we can all sit in and be more knowledgeable of what's going on. I've got a bunch of stuff here that I don't even know how to ask it. You know what I'm saying? So, that's me.
Let me ask something. Who is the governing body of this document?
You are. That's,
Planning and zoning.
So,
yeah.
Planning and zoning.
if you table it and you have a work session for this body, and then it goes to council, it's a cumbersome document. Is there gonna be a requirement for another work session and another better understanding?
Yeah, we'll have to republish it and kind of start over, but that's okay. I mean, I'll never discourage you from.
I'm saying if we've got more knowledge, the rest that's on the council, and there's 3 of us that's on the council,
Right.
we'll be able to communicate with them and let them know the knowledge that they need to know about if they got questions that we can answer for them.
No.
There's a lot of things here I can't answer.
I
don't know if
understand
Tommy can or
completely,
not.
but because it is a complex, detailed, cumbersome document, and it took years to develop, it would take probably just as long for somebody like me to understand it. And the thing that I'm picking up is, this is not written in stone by any means. It can be altered, it can be changed, it can be, everything can be done. It's not something that's the law, that's what we're going with. No, it's not. It's a good guideline. It's just something to go by until somebody initiates a project, and this document, what's written in this document, does not, it conflicts with that. Then you guys can look at it, or we can look at it and say, well, maybe we should change this.
Right.
But the thing I think we're losing is, yes, it's complex, but it's not in stone.
Good point.
No, but there is some questions in here that we could settle before, because if, you know how government is, if we say, well, we don't like this, or this should be changed, how long does it take? It may take a year, 2 years to get it changed. And I'm just saying, just like to have a little more knowledge to where I feel comfortable, and somebody asks me a question, or they want something, maybe we can help part of it before that. That's me. I'm just saying maybe a work session or a month or so till we can look a little more into detail here, but that's me.
And I'll never,
No.
and you can do that, I'll never discourage you, but I will say, I mean, for whatever it's worth, I mean, we did have that big group work session, we did give it to you in advance, and you can
We
ask
did
any
get it,
questions
yeah,
you
you're
want.
right.
But you can ask any questions you want right now.
Well, part of them, I don't even know, this is all coming on pretty fast, and part of them, I don't even know what I have. I got things
Yes.
here, but I don't know all of it now.
Yes, sir.
I'd be sorry, I'm sorry to say that, but there's so much here, it's complex, I don't know where to go. There's like a whole bunch of it.
We'll do whatever,
Before
whatever.
that. I mean, that's
whatever-
just me, guys. You guys, it's open to the board.
I still recommend that we make a motion to approve this, because you've listened to Dell, and these people, and John, and with what you said, I think it's time to go forward instead of backward.
And I'll say, Mr. Fryman, if we want to schedule something between now and when it would go to council, we're happy to talk. And big picture process wise, obviously the council can make amendments to this as they
Okay.
approve it. If that happens, since the plan commission makes a favorable recommendation based on how it's written right now, and the council make changes, it comes back to the plan commission, and you can say, yeah, we agree with them, or no, we don't. If you say, yeah, we agree with them, it's done there. If you say, no, we don't, then it goes back to the council, and council still has the ultimate say.
And you're on council, Mr. Fryman, so you guys will see this again. And we can invite the plan commission to the council meeting if you like. Or we can have a work session, or whatever makes you most comfortable. We don't, that's not the wrong answer at all. It's just, whatever you prefer is what should happen as a board.
So do we have a motion to approve or deny this document?
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
I will second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Roll call, Mr. Johnson.
Jim Crook,
Just say aye or nay based on your vote.
Aye.
Derry Hutcherson,
Aye.
Tim Denning,
Aye.
Owen Cross,
Aye.
Thomas Roulette,
Aye.
Lenny Fryman.
Nay.
Mr. Abbott's absent. The ayes have it.
And guys, here's what I'll propose. We'll put we can put this on the March 18th city council meeting. That was the normal trajectory. We can have a work session in the interim and just invite these guys, back, and they could do it. You could be in with Zoom. I know we've imposed a lot on you, but I don't mind doing that. And we can invite the plan commission. So let's do all of that. Let's overdo it, not underdo it. And then if you guys have any questions in the interim, email me or John, and they'll get it to these folks. So we'll do a work session, even though we don't have to. We'll do that based on Mr. Fryman's request. We'll invite council and BZA and historic and APC, just like last time. Then at the council meeting where the council is gonna approve it or reject it or amend it, we'll invite everyone again. So we'll keep at it. Is that okay with everyone?
Fine with me, yeah.
Thank you.
Do we have any old business, John?
I do not.
Do we have a motion and or a second for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion adjourned. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I should have said nay, just so we have to stay here no longer.
I think you get outvoted.
Yeah, yeah.